Again. Hello everybody. I am here to do a quick review on Bookcon and this wonderful mini series that I just watched last night called Pose. As many of you are aware, some of you may not be aware, but I am a newly published author. I have a book. It's called The Perils of Real Estate Scam Alert. Basically, it's about how myself and various people that I know have been scammed while working in this business. So it's available to be picked up. I am still waiting for the revisions to be uploaded to Kindle, but it is available on Amazon for right now. So I went to Bookcon because I need to learn a little bit more about the field as far as marketing and maybe do a little bit of networking. So that's why I went. They had a class there, or a workshop, if you will, where they discussed with us about how you should go about mentioning people in your book. Now, I had to be very careful as far as how I went ahead to mention people in the book, because I was not aware that publishers can be sued for in the way you may portray somebody when you're writing a non-fictional real life story. So they went about telling us what the proper protocols were. They also shared with us what retreats and writing workshops we can go to in order to improve our writing skills. I really did like that, and I appreciate that. I did get a little networking. The only sad thing is I did not bring business cards with me, because I know that from going to Jacob Javits in the past, basically you just go to vendors and you just sign your name on various companies. But I didn't expect to get too much interaction with other authors or to network with other authors that were there. Then the other things that they did have some celebrities there. Bill Clinton, well, politician, celebrity, he's written a book with Mr. James Patterson, which seems to be more of a scandal type of has somewhat of a scandal type of feel to it. So if you like the show Scandal, you probably will like that book. I didn't attend his the little panel that they had with him and James Patterson, because that was not really my goal when I was to go there. Then they had another celebrity who unfortunately I'm not too familiar with him. He plays on True TV, and he's written a book, and he was talking about how to take your book and turn it into a miniseries. Now, the book that I've written, I don't plan on turning that into a miniseries or a movie, but I do have an idea in my head of another book that I would like to write that I would like to actually have it transformed into a movie. So I attended that. That was a lot of fun, actually. And then there was another panel later on in the afternoon that had several authors up there, none of whom I'm familiar with. They pretty much catered to the younger generation, teens and millennials. And they talked about how the process that they went through in order to turn their book into a movie. They spoke about everything from transferring it from a book to a transcript or a screen. Forgot the proper terminology. And casting for the characters in your book, and then dealing with people who don't have that creative energy or that creative side that you may have, and the clashes that it didn't seem as though they had a lot, but there are sometimes the conflicts as far as who to cast and what you want that's in your book to be portrayed in the movie. They discussed all of that at the forum. So I'm glad that I actually went to BookCon. Will I be returning? I don't think so, because the whole BookCon catered mostly to fictional books, fantasy, mystery writing, and the nonfiction books were more like dating, divorce, interpersonal relationships, not business relationships. So I probably will not be returning next year, but I did make some contacts with the vendors that I would like to pursue. The other thing that I noticed is that most of the readers that attended the expo, the BookCon, were mostly teenagers and millennial. My book is definitely not for teenagers. A teenager can read it and not be offended because I took all the curse words out of it, but it's really for first-time homeowners, first-time investors. I even have a little section there on people who are going to rent and what they should be careful of, because renters are also being scammed as well. So that is my gist of it. Again, I know that several of you out there are authors, and I did invite a few of you. I don't know if you actually went, but the only way I see myself going back is if there's an author that I really, 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 really love. That's the only way I can see myself going back to BookCon. Next, later on that night, I was too tired to see this show that I wanted to see, so I did see it earlier. Thank God they replayed this show. It's called Pose. Pose is a docudrama miniseries set in the 1980s, New York City, where I'm from, and it's based on the LGBTQ, I'm not sure how many other letters there are nowadays, community back then. And it had a lot of, it was very nostalgic for me because I'm from New York. I'm from the 80s. The 80s was the first time I've actually met somebody in the LGBTQ community in person. Outside of that, Sylvester, which was a singer back in the day, but he was on TV. That he was the only one that I can think of. There were others, of course, but everybody was in the closet that was supposedly gay. He was the only one that I can think of right now that was out. But in the 80s, my mother registered me into this place called the Door, the Center of Alternatives. And at that center, there were a lot of people in that community because the Door catered to people who were runaways and throwaways. And many of the people who were throwaways at that time were either gay or they were teenage girls that got themselves pregnant. Well, sometimes they didn't get themselves pregnant because I met some that were actually raped by family friends or by other members in their family. Excuse me. So that was the first time I, met anybody in that community. And it was a little uncomfortable at first because of how I was raised, but I fell in love with them. They were really nice to me. They protected me. Now, the ballroom scene I wasn't really too familiar with until much later. I never really went there, but a lot of other things that the miniseries talked about, I can definitely relate to. The music, for one, of course. I think everybody who's from the 80s in New York City, you can definitely relate to it. You can relate to the homelessness that we used to see in certain areas. We still have homelessness actually in the city. It's pathetic. We're like, I was reading somewhere that said that New York was actually, when it comes to homelessness, we're actually the number one city in the United States, which is crazy to me. Anyway, one of the themes or one of the things that was brought out in the movie that I could relate to is that in New York, the way things work here is that when you are your neighbors, a lot of times, and sometimes even your friends, hi Felisa, hi, a lot of times your friends and your neighbors surpass being your friends and your neighbors, and they become like your family. And that's one of the strong themes that I got from this miniseries. Hi, Jose. And that I could definitely relate to, even though I'm not part of that community. The other thing that I can relate to is that the boy, the father seems as though he was trying to push him into being a certain way, as far as he didn't really want him to be a dancer. And I know growing up, I've met people whose parents didn't want them to be artists and were trying to push them into being into business. So I could relate to it in that way. The other thing, though, one thing that the movie brought out that kind of made me tear up just a little bit was my friends that I met, particularly at the door, they told me about their parents throwing them out. And I mean, I didn't like it when I first heard them say it, but to actually see it depicted on screen, that really touched my heart. It really hurt a lot. I was like, wow, we were so cold, and I think most people today are definitely more accepting of it than they were back then. I mean, not everybody like totally embraces it, but I think most people, if you watch it, you'll probably agree that throwing your child out like that's really not cool. But I want to bring to the attention all of you, that if you see someone, if you know someone whose parents have kicked them out of their house, or they've run away and you see them sleeping on the street, especially if it's a teenager, I want you to encourage them, especially those of my New Yorkers out here. I want you to encourage them to go to the door, the Center of Alternatives. What they do is they provide supportive housing for these kids. I don't know how the whole process works, because when I was with the door, I was not involved with them in that way. I was involved in their after school program because my mother, she worked several jobs and she didn't have time to help me with my studies. So being that they offered free tutoring, that's how I got there. Plus they had art classes, they had cooking classes, karate, you name it, they pretty much had it. So my mother had me register with them for those activities, so I can tell you about those. But what I do know for a fact, several of my friends that were there were throwaways, as I said, and some were, hi Wanda, they were runaways. And they did offer free supportive housing to all of the teenagers. You got it, I think it's until you're 24. They may have changed the age, because you have to remember that was 1980 when I was there. So now it's 2018. They may have changed things. But besides housing and free tutoring, they helped, if the kid dropped out of school, they helped them get their GED free. They helped them with budgeting free. They help them with other skills, job skills. They also had a job placement program. Now, once the child got a job, they were charged according to their income. So definitely make note of that. They also helped them get free food. They also offered free, they offered dinner actually when I was there. And even I was able to take advantage of that as well. So you didn't have to be a homeless teen in order to get the food, is what I'm saying. And the jobs that they offered were you either worked at the door or you worked at another nonprofit organization. There were some for-profit organizations that would hire them, like you would probably get hired in the mailroom and start your way there. So I just want to ask everybody that if you see a homeless teenager anywhere, please let them go to the door, the Center of Alternatives. And after the video, I will definitely leave a link so that you can direct them there. I know that they used to be on 18th Street and 6th Avenue, but I heard that they recently, well, not too recently, a while ago, they moved down to Broome Street so that they can get some help and not be on the street. The other thing I want to tell you guys about, as I mentioned before, some of the kids that were thrown out were girls who were pregnant. Some of the girls that were pregnant either by a family friend, a family, neighbor, what have you. Now, because of all the scams that I've been through, I've been running background checks on everybody that wants to do business with me. Hi, Stacy. I've been running background checks with everybody who wants to do business with me. And when I run the background check, it doesn't just show me what the person who I'm looking at. It shows me who their neighbors are. And a number of times I've seen where people who either live next door to the person or, you know, a couple floors down in the same building, they're child molesters. So I want to ask all of you to please be careful with who you let your child be around. If your child says something about an adult touched them inappropriately, I will like to encourage you to please believe your child, maybe get your child to a doctor, have them tested, looked over, looked at, or what have you, because this is a very real problem. I know people who this has happened to, and I don't want something like that to happen to anyone else, especially any of my friends or family. It would really hurt me. I'm sensitive. I got a big heart. So that's basically what I wanted to impart on you guys. And bye for now. Hi, Gregory. Bye for now. And as always, I will drop the links to the supportive housing. And I'll also drop the links to the previous videos that I made. I made a video about programs for first-time home buyers. And I also redid the video on Las Vegas. My final trip review is also uploaded on my YouTube channel. All right, take care. Have a nice day, everybody.